Hey everyone, welcome back to the next session for the 2022 SOFA Summit. I'm fired up for our upcoming speaker. He's an individual that we have been working with for the last 5 years now. We have done hundreds of transactions together, and his name is Greg Iverson. Greg, how you doing today?
Mark, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to crossing over that threshold of 1,000 together. We've got to be getting close one of these days.
Yeah, we'll be experts here soon. I love
Yes,
it. I love it. So
yes.
Greg, he is one of our preferred lenders. And when it comes to having debt as a whole, there's the good debt and the bad debt, right? Bad debt, credit card loans, things that aren't going to actually give you a return on your investment. But then the good debt, quality leverage is exactly what Greg is here to focus on, because it is a safe and secure way to increase your return on your investment on your rental property portfolio. But you need to make sure that you're working with someone that is an expert in rental properties and isn't just a lender that focuses on homeowner loans. Recommend someone that has their own portfolio and someone that this is their main focus day in and day out. So without further ado, Greg, why don't you take it?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Mark. I remember when we first, well, let me just back up a little bit. So I was an investor prior to ever doing investment loans. And for the longest time, I kind of ran in these two different worlds where I was building my own rental portfolio, and then I was doing mainly primary residence mortgage loans. And then one day it hit me, and it was around the time that I met you, that if I could marry these two together, it's like the best of both worlds. Because I have a passion for both of them, but I had never really let them cross paths and kind of organically grow together. And I remember when I first discovered it, I was just like mind blown. I'm like, wow, there are so many opportunities out here. As a mortgage lender, but also to learn more and more about the investment arena myself, that obviously could help our clients and, of course, benefit my own family as well. And admittedly, when we first jumped in, and you probably remember some of these growing pains, our small team of two at that point, myself and one other, we realized there was a lot that goes into it. And it's almost like rebuilding the infrastructure and the ability to close those types of loans, just with different moving parts and things like that. So, back to your point, not all lenders embrace investment type loans, but I will say the ones that you work with and the ones that do embrace it, it's something that we absolutely fall in love with and kind of build our entire organization around that. It's kind of business, a business in and of itself at the end of the day. So super excited to be here, and obviously for the relationship as well. And always a fun time. Not that I didn't like coming down for Memphis in May. I definitely enjoyed that, but it is very convenient to do it here from my so-called sofa here, which just happens to be my office. So yeah, let's rock and roll.
All right. Yeah. Share your screen and fire away.
A couple things, Mark. So this one I divided up into two different categories. One would be, which we touched on a little bit last year, but every time I go back and read this, I'm absolutely blown away again, about paying cash versus leverage, what the actual returns are by taking on leverage. So I'm going to kick off a little bit on that and run through some of the math again that we talked about last year as well, but just to kind of brush up on that. The other piece I want to talk about is on the other end of that, the seasoned investor or even the beginning investor that's thinking about, okay, my plan is to go to 10 to 20 to 30 homes. What do I need to be aware of? What does that arena look like once we've exhausted, the golden ticket loans, I guess, or the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans that most of us have become accustomed to? That's where the non-QM, non-qualified mortgage is what that stands for. That's where that world comes into play. So I'd like to just, again, some broad strokes. I don't want to dive all the way down the rabbit hole of the guidelines and things like that, but more make your clients and your followers aware of it, while also kind of showing some of the cool features. Because one of the best things about these types of loans, well, the ability to scale is a huge thing, but The other piece of it, Mark, is the ability to underwrite these loans on the merits of the property. And what I mean by that is, let's say, Mark, you don't document your income necessarily, or you just began a new business, you're self-employed, and we're not able to use that income in a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac scenario, but you're buying a phenomenal investment property that cash flows. We can actually underwrite that property based on the cash flow of it, underwrite that loan based on the cash flow of the property. So super cool options out there. They come in and out of style, but I really just want to expose those here. So
Yeah,
that being said,
I think that's really powerful to chime in there. I mean, I remember myself personally. I mean, I was a 1099 originally, and so I wanted to go buy these single family rental properties, and it definitely, made it, it was a roadblock, right? Because as a 1099, you need to have 2 years of tax returns there. It's like, well, I don't want to wait 2 years. So if it would have had something, like this back in the beginning days, could have allowed you to get started much quicker.
You're exactly right, and a lot of people are in that position, whether it's that particular case or they've been in a job for 20 years and finally looked in the mirror and said, you know what, I can do this on my own just as well or better. Why not do it? But at the same time, not wanting to slow down their path to financial freedom. So all right, well, let's jump in then. So this, again, kind of geared towards my ready to build that real estate empire, not knowing where to start. Do they pay in cash? Do they take on leverage? And then ultimately, once they reach that mark of 10 Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac properties, what's next? So real quick on me, I know we talked about this quite a bit, but I began in the real estate investment space back in 2006 after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, used a line of credit to essentially do the burst strategy. Now, the reason I even include this right here is the burst strategy versus turnkey. They're like opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to investing. And the reason I'm on this call, of course, today, but the reason that I educate so many clients on the benefits of turnkey is I lived in that world, Mark, and like you and I were kind of talking about a little bit before we jumped on here, you have a whole company dedicated to that. What we're talking about here today is the client that wants to have a passive type of an income. They don't want to be MIP. They don't want to rehab a whole bunch of houses, have a dedicated crew and all that kind of thing. They want truly a passive, different type of lifestyle down the road. That's what we're after. But anyway, so owned a lot of different types of properties, sold some over time, but at one point about 75 units. And then, of course, I've been ranked as a top lender, both in the state here in Missouri, where I'm located, but also nationally, which is because of the investment world and the wonderful clients like MIP and, of course, many of your other clients that we've had an opportunity to work with many times over. So
aren't you number one? Aren't you number one in Missouri?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that. As a matter of fact, yes. Thank you. Right on cue. I'll just send me your address so I can make sure I send that gift card. No, last year I was. Yes, we were proud to be ranked the top unit lender in the entire state last year. Thanks to people like you. So again, we're gonna kick this off with leverage or not. What do those returns look like? We'll do a quick math exercise, really just to illustrate that. We'll talk about those non-QM products, kind of pros and cons of them, and then we'll recap the high level. What are the main ones to look out for? Main one being the one that you can underwrite the property based on the cash flow rather than the income of the actual borrower, and then a few resources just to keep you going. So when you talk about cash versus financing, you talk about cash flow, the ability to scale. What are your cash on cash rates of return? I would say when I talk to someone that is just dead set on paying in cash, it's the sleep factor, that they're not going to get in over their head. They're not going to go underwater, things like that. There's a lot of value in that, and I would not ever be one to argue against it. However, for the other set of the population, which there are many, that really want to be able to leverage, scale quickly, overall grow it faster and achieve greater returns, there's really no better way to do it than leverage. You're dealing with other people's money. Of course, interest rate and loan terms are very, very important. Again, looking at cash on cash and the ability to scale. So what is cash on cash? So cash on cash rate of return At the end of the day, it calculates the cash income earned on the cash invested in the property. So it's really a marker when you're thinking about, do I make a higher down payment, or do I make this bare minimum down payment and then use the remainder to invest it elsewhere? You really want to figure out what is that cash earning on a cash on cash return basis. So let's do a quick little math problem just to illustrate paying in cash versus taking on leverage. So we've got $100,000 to spend, and we're trying to decide, do I buy one $100,000 house, or do I buy five $100,000 houses where I make a 20% down payment? Again, we're using rough numbers here. I know there are closing costs and things that come into play, but I just want to make it a simple illustration here. So do you buy five or do you buy one? Pay in all cash, or do you take on five loans? It's the same 100,000 regardless. Each home rents exactly the same, $1,150 per month, carries a tax and insurance payment of $175. Other expenses, maintenance, management, things like that, average about $350. So the total monthly expenses, not counting mortgage payment, then are $525 on this particular property. So our cash return on investment, again, it's just $1,150 minus $525 gives us $625 in cash flow. So annual cash flow is $7,500 total. So then what we do is we take $7,500, divide that by our $100,000 investment, we get 7.5% return. Not bad. When you compare that with maybe the S&P 500 that kicks off 10% per year, and you don't dive into real estate or have any of the things that come with real estate, kind of tough to argue, you know. Obviously, you're not factoring in appreciation, some of those other things, but just purely looking at this, not as exciting as I would hope for in real estate. Now, this is where it gets exciting, though, the financed ROI. So using a 20% down payment, this investor instead would choose to buy five homes, each valued at $100,000, 80% loan. Now, this is the piece that it's a little bit wishful thinking. I put the interest rate at 4.5 because I want to get back there. We're not there currently, but we were for quite a while, as you know. So take that for what it's worth. They are a little bit higher than that right now. However, we are seeing them, as we talked about before we jumped on, touching back into the something with a 5 in front of it, which is super exciting for us. So anyway, once we factor in that mortgage payment and those monthly expenses that we talked about previously, those come out to $930. So about a cash flow of $220 in this case, or $2640 annually. Now, when you take and multiply that by five houses, that gives you a total cash flow then of $13,200. Not quite double, but it's getting awfully close. You take that $13,200 divided by the $100,000, all of a sudden your cash on cash rate of return, just because you took out a loan. That's the only thing you did differently. You bought the exact same MIP houses. They're managed the exact same. Everything is exactly the same. Your return goes to 13.2% from 7.5. Now that's where it gets pretty exciting for me. You know, when you couple that with appreciation and many other factors, that to me is very, very intriguing. Not to mention the ability to acquire five houses as opposed to one, scale up faster, and so on and so forth. So hopefully I've convinced you to at least consider financing. Now, pros of it, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac terms are long-term fixed rates right now. They have been for a long time. We definitely expect them to stay that way. Higher cash on cash rates of return, the ability to scale up faster, obviously. The cons of it, reduced cash flow. 2008, we all remember that. The possibility that you could go underwater if those properties go down in value and you have loans on them. Obviously, that's not an exciting thing. Although my advice if we ever get to that point, which I don't believe we'll get back there, but if we do, the best advice I'll be giving, I know I will be saying the same thing, is, well, I would buy more. Hang on, know this tide will change, and buy as many as you can right now, because this is not a long-term thing. But anyway, that'll be down the road.
And you're speaking from experience, because you bought the majority of your properties right after 2008 at just one of the best times in the history to be a real estate investor.
Literally the greatest thing that ever happened to me, which I always do feel a little guilty when I say it, because it was obviously a painful thing for a lot of people, and I don't want to make light of that. But I see different markets, COVID, 2008, things like that, really for the opportunity that they are. And I think when you look at it from that lens, Mark, you would probably say the same thing. And you and I talk about this all the time. Where's the opportunity right now? There's always an opportunity. It's just a matter of getting past the fear and identifying, okay, so my houses are a little bit underwater right now, or they're worth a little bit less than what I paid. But wow, I've got an opportunity to buy another 20 at these values. Imagine what they'll look like when they go back to where they were just 5 years ago.
And the psychological aspect of it is hindsight's 2020, right? So post 2008, when you bought your houses, it's easy to say now in 2022 that you're a genius. But back in 2009, 10, and 11, I bet a lot of people thought you were crazy.
Yeah, completely. My mom did. My mom thought I was going bankrupt. I will admit, those first couple of years, it was purely on trusting myself and the process that I was on, or that I was engaging in, because there weren't a whole lot of signs for those first few years that, yeah, this is really working well. However, year 5, year 10, now looking back, year 15 or 20, it's like, okay, wow, that was the right thing. But obviously, hindsight's always 2020. So anyway, pros and cons of cash. Then, of course, pros of cash: quick closings, no contingencies, no interest expense. So you have better cash flow, maybe better sleep for some people. That wouldn't necessarily help me sleep better, but it definitely does. And you can, of course, finance later. So we'll have some, in the case of quick closings, they would pay cash, but then they take out a loan with us a couple months down the road. So you always do still have that ability. One of the biggest cons of paying in cash is slower growth. That 100,000 is spent, and it's a matter of saving that 100,000 essentially to start all over again, and that could take five years. So that's a big piece of it, just slowing down the ability to acquire those properties. So what's next? So we're reaching 10 finance properties. What do we do at that point? Or we're just getting started and we're thinking, okay, I'm going to really go all in. I'm going to get to my 10, and then what am I going to do? So I like to always have this conversation with people from the very start. But more than anything, once we get to that point, this is a very, very important conversation, because once they fall in love with it, like I did, they don't want to stop at 10, and they don't want to stop at 20. They want to continue on, So let me just mark something here real quick.
Yeah. So while you talk there, we can dive in. There's some more really incredible, benefits of financing, and that is the appreciation rate is now leveraged. So if you buy in cash and get a 5% appreciation, well, that's a 5% return on your money. But if you put 20% down, you're only paying for 1/5 of the actual property. So you have to multiply the appreciation rate by 5. And that is going to be what your actual return on investment is from an appreciation standpoint. So now your 5% appreciation on a house where you put 20% down is a 25% return in equity of appreciation. And that difference right there is, for a lot of people, just having that leveraged appreciation, building that equity, and having a tenant pay down your mortgage, because at the end of 30 years, you own the property in full. And so now that is a return. It's going into that savings account, which is the house, every single time that tenant pays rent, which pays for the mortgage. That in itself is a little bit over a 10% return annualized over 30 years. So just having a tenant pay down your mortgage and the leverage appreciation, for a lot of people, that's all they want. There's a lot of larger, higher net worth, institutional type investors that they buy negative cash flowing properties, and it's mind blowing. Like, why would you do that? But they just want that A-class property that has that best chance to appreciate and to just have a really, low maintenance, low issues, and low headaches. Now, our focus here in Memphis is to be cash flow positive, but it's just interesting to know that there's a lot of people out there that just want those two benefits alone, and that's the power of leverage.
It is so good. And so what was the appreciation rate last year in Memphis?
Last year in Memphis, appreciation rate was 20%, which is
20%.
Yeah, which is that's not normal.
It's
That
not normal. No. But just to humor each other for a second. So, and over the last decade, it's been on average 6% a year or so. Which
yeah,
again, historically, that's probably not going to hold forever. But when you think about that, if you put down a 20% down payment and you bought a house that appreciated 20% in 1 year, isn't that just wild? I mean,
100% return on your money
you're
in one
getting
year.
more than that because it's actually that appreciation is based on that the entire package, the 100% of the purchase price. You know,
Mhm.
it's just yeah. So I'm so glad you brought that up because it's something I've really focused in on. You know, when interest rates start to go up and the party is I wouldn't say the party's over, but in a way it is. You know, the COVID interest rate environment is over. You always start to look at other ways to justify what you're doing. You know, and let me dig in and look at some of these other returns. That alone, when you think about the leverage depreciation, it's like mind blowing. You know,
Yeah.
and that's not something you can really do in other investments
No,
or the
not at
stock
all.
market.
I mean, my number one favorite part of owning rental properties and having leverage is just going down to the bare bones minimum. Let's say there's no appreciation. Let's say there's no rent growth. Let's say there's no cash flow at all. And all you do is have a tenant pay off your mortgage. You put 20% down and that tenant pays off that mortgage. The fact that that's over a 10% return on your money on average, and that's the bare bones minimum. So that's already comparable to the stock market, because obviously with the stock market, you're going to have to pay taxes on those gains. So kind of knocks it down closer to that 10%. So we're already equal. So basically bare bones minimum owning rental properties is already equal to the average of the S&P 500. And then of course, appreciation,
Every
inflation,
other
rent
beautiful.
growth, cash flow, like it just fires you up. And it's like, okay, this is why we're doing it. This is why we're spending the time to educate and learn about this alternative asset class.
Yeah. No, you're so spot on with it. So all right. So now that we've kind of talked about that, because that's the main point well, several of those, but thanks for bringing that up because those are the main points I always really want to illustrate for people that particularly those that they haven't gotten started yet or they're just getting started. They're thinking, why do this? This seems more complex. I got to learn a lot more than I do if I just put my money in 401k or put it with a financial advisor, things like that. So no, I'm glad we covered that. What I wanted to wrap up with are this world of non-QM. So for those that are reaching that 10 level, maybe you already have reached that, or if you're like me and you're thinking about buying your first one, but at the same time you're thinking about buying your 50th, or other, of course, friends that we've seen grow like that, friends and clients, Mark. It's always worth having this conversation even very, very early on. So non-QM loans, essentially what they are is they're outside of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Private money is financing those, like, big hedge funds and things like that are financing those. So they can write a little bit different rules than what Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac does. And specifically in the investment world, the approach has been, well, let's look at the confining or the parts of Fannie Mae that people don't like, or the ones that make it to where it's not as attractive of a loan, and then let's kind of modify our guidelines to fill that niche, with the biggest one being when you're capped, when you get to 10 finance loans, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac say, we're out. Good luck. It's been fun. We hope all the best down the road. This non-QM world identifies that as, wow, we've got a lot of people out there that Mark and Greg know that they work with that they want to go big and continue on. Let's fill that gap for them. So pros, again, unlimited ability. You do still have unlimited ability to acquire rental properties. You do still have long-term fixed rate financing options available, asset-based lending, ability to buy in an LLC, and potentially some more flexible underwriting guidelines. Now, on the con side of that, typically a little bit higher rates and costs than Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Minimum loan amounts. So sometimes in certain cases, there are properties that can be a great investment, but these do not quite, the prices or the amount borrowed is not quite enough to meet the minimums. guidelines can change, and funding capacity, like we were kind of talking about before we jumped on here. Um, these are not always funded. COVID was a good example where private investors said, hey, let's step back and think about things. Let's watch this play out. Let's not fund loans right now until we know what the heck's going to happen. Now, of course, jumped right back in the game, but that caught us all off guard. We were not prepared for it. Matter of fact, we had some of these loans out there that we were kind of holding on to, wondering, okay, what are we going to do with them now, type thing, So a few different products in this world. And the biggest one I want to focus on today is the investor cash flow. So it's underwritten based on the merits of the property versus your personal income, or the qualifying characteristics of you as a borrower. It's more looking at that property that you're acquiring and saying, heck yeah, this is a great investment. We trust Mark's a good guy, but even if he doesn't make a lot of money during the day or have a good job or things like that, this property is a good asset, a good investment for him. In the single rental property loans, a few of those characteristics, but essentially you just have one loan, one property. Portfolio rental loans, however, you can have, and I've had these before, 20 properties on one loan. A little bit easier to manage, things like that. Again, something outside the box of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Here's where it gets good. The investor cash flow mortgage. So credit score is down to 640, so there's some flexibility there. Biggest thing is no personal income required to qualify. So saves you from submitting income statements, tax returns, all of those headaches. Loans all the way up to $1.5 million. But like I said, there is that minimum of 75,000. In certain cases, it's even as high as 125 to 150,000. DSCR. So this deals with debt service coverage ratio of 1%. Essentially, that the rents need to cover the expenses of the property. Doesn't need to be a whole lot more than that, which at this point in time is pretty liberal overall. Again, no personal income. Property can be in LLCs, potentially a little bit more flexible underwriting. 40-year loan options now. I think you and I were talking about this recently, Mark, where these are coming back into play. These 40-year, these are non-QM. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they do not embrace that world yet, like the non-QM space might. And then, of course, non-warrantable condos as well could be an option. Fix and flip. So again, I don't want to go all the way down the rabbit hole other than to let people know these are available. This is not something that we're specifically talking about today as it relates to turnkey property purchasing. But there are a lot of different options here in this non-QM space. So again, single property rental loans, there's portfolio, their investor cash flow, and then these fix and flip options available. So one more thing I want to cover real quick. So we talk about, and I get this question all the time where, okay, so cash, down payment, how do I actually, like, what is that? Does it need to be cash in a briefcase? Does it need to be cash in my checking account? And the beauty of it, and the way that I've structured a lot of our purchases in the past, no, it does not. You can use private lenders. You can use hard money to acquire that. You can use a line of credit on, you may have a Wells Fargo brokerage account, for instance. You can take a line of credit against that functions as cash, but you don't actually need to withdraw your money.
And to ask a quick question, this is only for the non-QM side. This isn't for the golden ticket Fannie Freddies to be able to use a hard money loan as your 20% down payment.
Great question. I'm glad you asked that. So certain of these do apply to non-QM, certain apply to both. So margin line of credit applies to both. HELOCs and second mortgages apply to both. Hard money, no. Typically Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, unless it's hard money on another property that's paid off or something, but we won't go all the way into that. But whole life insurance, cash value, you can use that on Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Can we use a rich uncle? That would be more in the non-QM space unless he's actually going on that financing with you. Financial partners, and then at the end of the day, what you really want to look at is what is your cash on cash rate of return by taking on that leverage. But I always like to talk about that because a lot of people, when they're strategizing and we start to talking, they say, well, I do have this out there. I do have a stock account. There's not a ton of money in it, but there's 100,000 there. Well, you can take a line of credit and potentially have 60,000 available. That can be your down payment on a Fannie Mae loan. So a lot of different ways to. And that's the other thing, Mark, I really have fallen in love with in real estate is there's no one size fits all approach. There's so many ways that you can. Once you're clear on what you're after and what you truly want to do, there's so many different directions you can go with it. It's just, it's amazing. It's like you can learn every day. You never get to the point where it's like you've mastered it. Even you who literally have done this thousands of times, I'm sure every day you're learning.
Yeah, well, it's
probably mainly for me, but you probably learn from others too, here and there.
Amen.
But, it's something that you're constantly a student of it, and so much can change overall.
That's also one of the fun parts about real estate. Just look at all the podcasts out there. It's very entertaining for a lot of people. The majority of people that learn about real estate, a lot of people probably on the Sofa Summit right now have never invested in real estate, will never invest in real estate, but they'll consume hours and hours of education and content because at the end of the day, it's kind of fun.
Very exciting.
And I definitely think so. And these book recommendations, those are top notch.
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up with these. Every time I speak, I get so many questions on books and things like that, and it's been these are ones that I always go back to. When I'm looking for, okay, it's January 1. What are we going to do this year? These are very mindset driven type.
Definitely. I think the biggest one for the listeners to this particular session is the Wealthy Code with George Antone down there.
Did I include that? Yes, exactly.
That's at the very bottom. I was literally just reading that one last night. It's a really good one, to talk about the benefits of leverage and how to make sure to use it properly and how to properly calculate some, higher level, but very important numbers to make sure that you're taking on the proper debt. Because once you go and leave this Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac conventional loan, you can get 10. That's easy because the loan terms are almost the same for everyone, right?
Yes,
20% down, fixed percent interest rate, 30-year AM. That's easy. But as soon as you go into this non-QM portfolio commercial world, the debt piece is equally, if not more important. It can be the difference between a bad deal and a good deal.
I was just going to say it can make or break your investment.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think also giving more credibility to working with a reputable company like MIP, a reputable lender, that those are folks that have your best interest in mind and know the world. It's what we live and breathe every single day. Like you said, you're reading the Wealthy Code. A, probably you love that stuff, but B, it makes you a better operator. It makes you more valuable to your clients because you're spending the time to educate yourself on that type of stuff after. Yeah, it's interesting. That book was given to me by our friend who I think you're having on as well today, or maybe tomorrow when you have him on. But Scott Saunders, he sent that to me, and I think I got it in the mail and sat down and read the whole thing, in a matter of a day or so.
That's exactly how we heard of it. He said he put it in the mail, and I got too antsy and just bought it online and just read it online because I couldn't wait.
Yeah. George must love him because he's a big proponent of his stuff.
He's a raving fan, that's for sure. So anyways, you out there listening to the Sofa Summit, highly recommend the books on that list. That's a really great all-encompassing, you read all the books on that list, and then you'll say, I get it and I'm in, or this is not what I want to do. I want to stick to the traditional routes and put it in a index fund in the S&P and be done. I
was just going to say at the end of the day, that will tell you if you're going to fall in love with it or if it's just not really exciting, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that'll tell you pretty quickly. So Mark, I want to wrap up obviously with, here's my contact info. Here's how to reach me. We love the space. We like strategizing with clients that are like me when I was 24, 25 years old, and I had this huge ambition, but I didn't have anybody to give me the guidance. without seeking them out and asking them and things like that. We love being in that role where we've seen it, we've lived that world ourselves personally, myself and my team, but we've also worked with thousands of clients that are, seeking out financial freedom. We've learned a lot by that. We've learned a lot, Mark, by coming down and seeing your operation now and then and seeing what really goes into all of this, and what does it take to be successful in acquiring rental property. So
That's it.
That being said, I don't know if you have some closing.
No, how do people get a hold of you?
There it is right there. So the biggest thing, the mobile number on there. Call or text is typically the easiest way to reach me. My mobile, again, is that 636-751-1068. If you happen to be in St. Louis, Missouri at all, I'd love for you to stop by. We're always excited when clients just happen to be going through town and they stop in to say hello. And hopefully, like we've talked about, sooner than later, we'll have an office in Memphis as well. So we'll be able to participate when you all have clients in town too. So
exciting.
But ultimately, text or call me. It's not terribly tricky to get a hold of me. But let me just kind of wrap up with this, Mark. The relationship over time has been super, super valuable, and I really appreciate having me on like this. For those listening and just trying to decide if they want to do this, it is not for everybody. I think we can agree to that. But if you're intrigued by what you're seeing throughout the SOFA Summit, reach out to Mark and his team. I really do mean this when I say, when I have someone come to me and ask me, hey, I want to get into this, who should I call? I said, call Mark. I'll do the loan for you. I'll help you finance it, but give Mark a call. Don't go it alone. Rely on their 100 years of experience in doing this. Build your foundation that way. If you want to go out and flip houses and do your own thing, that's great. I don't want to discourage that, but your chances of success increase considerably when you plug into a group, that you've built out specifically at MIP, and the resources you all have available to you, helps immensely. Get up over that learning curve and realize, hey, I do like this or I don't like this. Matter of fact, Mark, I've had, I can think right now of, 3-4 friends right off the top of my head that have had just a phenomenal experience that matter of fact, I think I knew them all here from the gym here in St. Louis, and they wanted to get into it. And I said, you're asking the wrong guy. You need to call this Mark guy. He knows a heck of a lot more about it than I do. So thank you for that, by the way.
Hey, my pleasure. Appreciate the kind words and the relationship, because that's, for everyone here on the SOFA Summit, it's all about the team. It's all about your boots on the ground. And one of the big benefits of utilizing a lender like Greg is that he has the experience of 75 doors in the portfolio. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, that, props to you for being able to build that type of a portfolio. And I'm sure you've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And
thank you. Yes.
that's the thing that you can actually, learn from someone like Greg and someone like us, as opposed to going and just doing it alone, is, we can help educate you to avoid those pitfalls, and increase your chances for success, reduce that risk, and, achieve financial freedom. That's what we're here for at the end of the day. So,
yep.
Well,
100%, man.
That's it. Well, appreciate you, Greg. And for everyone out there on the SOFA Summit, hope you guys enjoyed this session, and off to the next. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.